Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian, and today we are continuing with our top 10 lists. Today we are talking about my 10 favorite craft whiskeys of 2024. As I mentioned in other videos, I do have some ground rules over here. If you haven't watched that video yet and you want to see why I put certain products in certain lists, what the lists are about and all that, you can find some more of that information here. But here is a really fun list for me this year. In years past, I feel like this has been a bit of a manglemesh of products as we're seeing producers and products come of age. We're in a really fun and exciting time for craft whiskey producers now, where they're hitting really interesting age statements, they're coming into really solid products, and they have a really good foundation here, making this list really unique in 2024 specifically. I think the most interesting thing to highlight on this list, going into it throughout the year, I said, this list is going to be the products I feel like have kind of the craft profile. When you think of craft whiskey, these are maybe some of the things that you think about them tasting like. But what it turned out to be in the end are actually some really well done products that I feel like really exemplify what craft whiskey is all about right now. Not only that, but uniquely, I think that every product in this list is made outside of Kentucky this year. Let's go ahead and dive into number 10. While I have you guys here, jump down below, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, help me continue to grow the channel here in 2025, and let me know what your favorite craft whiskey of the year has been. Let's jump into number 10. The product that came in at number 10 on my list has been there since the very beginning of the year when it first released. So much so that it's actually a 2023 release, limited edition from this brand, but we got it in 2024 and that's how we're talking about it. This is the J. Henry & Sons 2023 limited edition. J. Henry is out of Wisconsin. And I feel like while there's some products about J. Henry that I don't necessarily enjoy, this limited edition and their bourbons in general to me kind of come off like a craft version of Four Roses. It's kind of malty, chocolatey. It has this kind of spiced pecan profile as well. So if you're into the nutty, you're a little bit into the spicy, and then a pretty solid amount of oak showing as well. This is cask strength. It's 5.5 to 9 years old, and it is a 4-grain recipe. So it does have wheat and rye in it as well, and as well as Wisconsin red corn. This is a release they put out every year. I haven't seen the 2024 version of it yet, but I'm sure that I'll see it coming up soon. Something maybe you want to be looking out for. That is J. Henry & Sons limited edition anniversary bottle. Coming in number 9 on my list of craft whiskeys of the year is this Woodenville 8-year. Now, I feel like I've heard several people talking about the Woodenville 8-year in various other circles as well, and this is a really fun profile coming out of Washington. It is 100 proof, so know that the palate's gonna be a little bit softer, but what I think you run into is a really interesting and fun profile that reminds me of cloves and bread pudding. 55% corn, 35% rye, 10% malted barley. It almost has a little bit of the creme brulee kind of custardy profile that I have talked about before in the Jimmy Red, where as you sit with it, while there's spice, it just has this kind of voluptuous, creamy, chewy, kind of vanilla spiced profile going on. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about craft, especially when it's nuanced well, and especially when it just doesn't hit with all the kind of funky notes that you may have otherwise known or thought you've known in craft whiskey. While I enjoy other barrels that Woodenville has put out, I definitely think this is probably one of the better ones that I have tried from them. Coming in 9th place, that is the Woodenville 8-year bourbon. Coming in at number 8 on my craft whiskeys of 2024 list is the Hard Truth Sweet Mash Wheated Bourbon. Now, this comes out of Nashville, Indiana, 69% corn, 19% wheat, 12% malt barley. I feel like of a lot of the ones on this list, this does kind of still have the kind of profile that you would expect from a craft whiskey, but with some really interesting turns to it as well. If you're one who likes a bright profile, a spiced profile, you don't want it to be too spicy, linger, and just kind of light you up. Again, this one also is coming in at 100 proof. So if you kind of like the idea of kind of some fresh pepper and apple with this nice kind of crisp but still sweet linger, definitely give this Hard Truth Sweet Mash Wheated Bourbon a try. Coming in 7th place, craft whiskeys of 2024 list is this Deadling cask strength bourbon. Now, this comes out of Alabama. I don't think I had tried anything from Alabama before we had this one. This is a single barrel. I do not believe we picked this ourselves. I think this was what was sent to us as a single barrel. For those interested, this is DSP AL 20004 white wheat. And this really is just a powerhouse of craft whiskey. The nose is super sweet and fruity. You have that kind of pocket of your caramels, your toffees, your vanillas, your brown sugars, then lots of ripe, sugary fruits as well. Palate is super juicy as well as very, very creamy. Very desserty with all the vanilla, creme brulee, brown sugar, caramel-like notes, but then it also continues with so much fruit as well, just like the nose. The finish is long, sweet, and most importantly, it's clinging. Again, this is cask strength, but it's only coming in at about 109 proof. This is such a viscous, enjoyable mouthfeel. Definitely one of my favorite craft whiskeys from this year, this Deadling cask strength bourbon. Coming in 6th place is from a distillery that you've seen score better in this list in years past, and it's not because it's not great. Because it is. There's just a lot of really good stuff in the list this year. Let's talk about the Ohio-produced Detrick Fine Whiskey. This comes out of Bell of Dayton Distillery. This is still continually one of my favorite craft products that comes out year over year. We've done a couple of single barrels from them. This actually is batch number or single barrel number 5. And is a foolproof bourbon. They're all super delicious and they're pretty consistent in their flavor profiles too. This is a 5-grain recipe: corn, oats, rye, wheat, and barley. And I feel like this is kind of like I mentioned about J. Henry, but in a slightly different way. This gives me some of the things that I like about Four Roses also. And I feel like there's a mouthfeel that comes to the whiskeys that might be a little bit polarizing, but the flavors that come out of this whiskey are unlike many others I've found in the craft whiskey space. If you've not checked out this distillery, really nice, beautiful palate, interesting complexity, good amount of oak. Definitely one I think that you should check out if you have not yet. Coming in at 6th place, this Detrick Fine Whiskey Foolproof Bourbon. Now, before we get into 5, let's talk about who brought us number 5, and that is Lost Lantern. Lost Lantern is a brand that is all about uncovering a lot of the different things happening in craft whiskey. I feel like you don't necessarily see these barreling houses so much in American whiskey as you do in others, but other industries, it would not be so uncommon. Someone like a Cadenheads that have their own umbrella and different criteria types that bring out different scotches or different bourbons that have been finished in certain barrels and anything like that. It's not uncommon to see those things, these singular expressions, released under their umbrella. And we see the same thing happening with Lost Lantern. I stop and talk to you about that now because there are several expressions brought to us from Lost Lantern you're going to see in this top 5, starting with number 5. Coming in 5th place in my top craft whiskeys of the year is this Lost Lantern barreling of Kings County Distillery. This is cask strength Kings County expression, and I put several Kings Counties in a blind to figure out which I was going to put into this year. We had a small batch that we did earlier this year. We had several single barrels. There's been a couple of expressions from Lost Lantern, and I feel like this is one of the best expressions that I got a chance to try from Kings County, coming from Lost Lantern. If you're not familiar, Kings County, New York distillery, they have a mixture of barrel sizes they use. This one specifically was a 15-gallon barrel, aged 6 years old. It's 80% corn, 20% malted barley. I feel like the profiles that you get with Kings County are so viscous, so chewy, and in the case of like batch 17 or 18 earlier in the year, I feel like it has these big, intense profiles that are like craft versions of George T. Stagg. Big spice, big honey, big fruit, nice oak. This one here is a bit more subdued, and that's the main reason I put on this list. Nuance, it's still complex. It's got a deep nose, it's a touch rustic, but the palate is rounded, it's fruity, it's juicy, and it's got a really long linger. Nice spice, nice oak, nice fruit, just a really great job of Lost Lantern finding these barrels in Kings County in general. That is number 5, this Lost Lantern Kings County Distillery. The thing that I love about the top 4 of this list is that when me and my friend Michael were doing these blinds, these pours were in both of our top 5s list. Coming in at number 4 is the Old Log Cabin. This is a 10-year-old bourbon whiskey. This is distilled and bottled by Old Log Cabin Distillery in Seattle, Washington. It's 51% corn, 49% malted barley. This was cask strength. It came in at 110 proof, but the palate is super drinkable. It has some tendencies that almost reminded me a little bit of Scotch. Lots of fruitiness. Again, very drinkable, and it did have a really high malt content. In the reveal, you can see why. But for a craft distilled product, 10 years old, that we're seeing on this list, great. I had not heard of Old Log Cabin before. I'm glad we did. Incredible to me that we're seeing these independent producers hitting 10-year age statements on their products, and we're able to bring those out and start to see what they have to offer that are not age statements from the big guys. It's really cool to see what kind of flavors are coming out, and it's interesting. This is a brand I wasn't familiar with before, coming out with a product, their own, 10 years age stated. Coming in at number 4 on the list, this is Old Log Cabin 10-year bourbon. Number 3 on my craft whiskeys of 2024 list happens to be this Rich Grain Distilling Co. bourbon, again brought to us from Lost Lantern. This was an 8-year straight Mississippi wheated bourbon. This is what is considered a ghost distillery. They closed their doors in 2020, and the barrels just continued to age there until they were acquired or bought, or however it came to be in Lost Lantern's hands. But what's so unique about a brand house like Lost Lantern showcasing this is that this is whiskey that isn't being made anymore. This is whiskey not produced anymore. The only way you have access to it is by a barreling house like a Lost Lantern who finds these gems and brings them to us to try. And that's what's a rare treat. So you don't get a chance to try Rich Grain that I know of outside of through Lost Lantern's umbrella. They did a blend, Mississippi Memory, really, really delicious. We got a chance to get a couple of single barrels here at Sealbox. That's what this one is here. This is coming in at its natural cask strength at 71.1% alcohol. It was aged 8 years old in a 30-gallon cask, and it comes in with a recipe of 66% Mississippi corn, 17% wheat, and 17% malt barley. This sucker, all the ones we had from Rich Grain, especially Mississippi Memory, I didn't have any more of that. I wish I could have put that in the blind because I really, really enjoy these products. But these are so thick, viscous, and fruity. I mean, these are incredible craft-produced products. It's deep, it's dark, it's resonant, and yet playful, sweet, nuanced, complex at the same time. It drinks nowhere near how high of a proof that this one is, allowing you just to really explore all these flavors while all that weight just kind of soaks into the palate. It's almost an experience, and one that I wish more people got a chance to try, but I'm curious to see if Lost Lantern is going to do more from Rich Grain Spirits in the future. I'm thankful for the bottling house. I'm thankful for the chance to try Rich Grain this year. Coming in third place, that's this Rich Grain Spirits wheated 8-year bourbon from Lost Lantern, Rich Grain Spirits. Coming in second place on my list of craft whiskeys of 2024 is again another Lost Lantern release. This one is a Highwire Distilling Jimmy Red cask. You've heard me talk about Jimmy Red several times, whether you follow me on Instagram or you've seen it here. I'm a big fan of what Highwire is doing in their Jimmy Red product specifically. If you've not caught the story, Highwire Distilling and their Jimmy Red product is made from 100% Jimmy Red corn. It was a variety of corn that was on the brink of extinction, got down to what they said documented 2 ears of corn, and now it's made in a fair amount of supply. And Highwire uses this to make a majority of the products that they have in the Jimmy Red bourbons. This is so creamy, custardy, chewy, sweet, enjoyable. I feel like while the nose has caramel bar, pecan pie, pecan pralines, the palate is like eating a McGriddle while smoking a cigar. I feel like it is kind of nuanced. There's a lot of things to pull out, but in the very, very end, it is just creamy and sweet and very specific on the profile. If you've not had like one of these big cream bomb Jimmy Reds, you may not be able to know what I'm talking about. For those who have, then you know what I'm talking about with this one, which is just this big, syrupy, sweet, creamy, lovely, desserty flavor profile. I have been over the moon with the things coming out of Highwire this year, and I'm so excited to continue to see what continues to happen in 2025. Coming in at number 2 from Lost Lantern, this Highwire 100% Jimmy Red cask. I feel like as I went back and forth through these lists, I couldn't help but put this one at number 1 because it had a bit more ongoing complexity to the pour in number 2. Coming in number 1 on my craft whiskeys of the year list is this 7-year wheated Jimmy Red bourbon from Highwire. This bottle came out towards the end of the year, but it really is one of my favorite wheated bourbons that I have had in some time. And I think what I like about it is because while a lot of other wheated bourbons, while they're supposed to be softer than the traditional rye bourbons, I feel like they still kind of have their own type of spice. In this one here, the spice is a layer to the flavors, but overall, because of the Jimmy Red in there too, has these big, sweet, custardy, chewy profile as well. The nose is dense, caramel, creamy, The palate is a little bit smoky. It's a little bit antique-y. There's a lot of things to explore if you're interested in the old, nuanced type of flavor profiles while still being incredibly rich and custardy. We just talked about that other Jimmy Red cask, so I didn't know what to look for when this one came out. And then when I finally got a chance to open it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much good flavor coming out, not only of Highwire, but just goes to show all the delicious craft whiskey that we have this year. Coming in number 1 on my craft whiskeys list, this Jimmy Red Wheated Bourbon 7-year. What a wild and enjoyable list this year for craft whiskey. I hope this was insightful and informational to you guys. Hope maybe you all find a new distillery you want to check out in 2025. I'm really curious to see what the state of craft whiskey is going to look like in this year and the ones to come. Thanks again, as always, everybody, for tuning into another video. Hope it was insightful, informational. Maybe you found a new craft distillery to watch in 2025. That does it for me today. Look for some more top 10 lists in the coming days here on the channel. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all next time.